national strategy and commercial scale, building esports ecosystem in MENA.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, my dear co-panelists and everyone around here. Year after year, we hear about the challenges, how to commercialize the esports industry, and everyone telling that it is hard, it's almost impossible. Yet all of us are here, all of us are still in the industry, still trying to find the right way how to make it happen. So there are quite a few questions that I have for each of you, and then kind of a couple of more generic on the challenges that we've seen in the 2025, on the success stories within the esports ecosystem for each, and what's your focus in 2026. So Darshan, starting with you here from NASR Esports, very glad to have you with us. NASR Esports will soon celebrate 10 years since its foundation, and it's been one of the first esports team organizations in the region, also being a home to some of the best local esports talent and even world-class talent in some of the game titles. So I wanted to ask you how NASR Esports has managed to navigate the complicated ecosystem of esports, and what helped to keep commercializing the organization, keep staying afloat, managing quite a wide pool of talent, and growing as well.
Yeah, thanks. Hi, good morning, everyone. It's good to see people here. Look, it's been a good, fun 10 years. I wouldn't say that it hasn't been fun. Of course, esports comes with its own set of challenges. What we've done is that we've successfully, of course, had players, we've had sponsors backing us for the most sort of time of our existence of 10 years. I think the way that the industry and the entire ecosystem is shaping up with a lot of stakeholders coming together, there's a lot of support that comes from the government. There is, of course, a lot of support that comes in from brands who are very, very intrinsic to the category, who believe a lot in esports, and they sell to the audiences and the demography that esports has. But I think one of the things that we've done over the last probably 12 months or so is pivoted to becoming an agency and serving brands rather than going to brands and saying, hey, look, why don't you come on board as sponsors? What we've understood is that a lot of brands are now wanting to engage with the demography, with the audiences in a far better way. Yeah, everyone's about building communities. We are also about building communities and using social. But I think what we've done is that we've changed our course on two points. One is that we've made our academy, which is our North Star now. We are focusing a lot more on the NASR Academy, where we are actively working with the GEMS set of schools in Abu Dhabi. And we are making that our path to finding raw talent and therefore training them and making esports a lot more accessible to a lot more kids, and therefore, catching them young and growing with them. And the second I said is, we've just go to brands now and ask them, hey, look, we are serving a demography, we have an audience, tell us what is it that we can do so that we can work together. And whether it is content creators, whether it is doing some activations, doing tournaments. So I think the traditional sponsorship route is obviously tough. So what we've done now is changed our course a little bit, and that's how we are moving forward, as we say.
So just to summarize, Darshan, today is the day to kind of diversify the revenue stream, and aside of being just a traditional esports team organization, also drift into an agency mode and try to break into these grassroots levels like schools, for example. Also following the same topics that were mentioned in the previous panel, where it is exactly the time to try and kind of build this bridge between the school level of esports talent and esports, professional esports.
Yeah, because it's important, Edward, to engage with brands. Today, they're not seeing the value in the sponsorship model, clearly. There's a clear mismatch in what dollars we are asking versus what they expect in terms of their KPI. So I think it's important to adapt and change and start working with them a little more closely and understand what is it that we can do for them. And I think that has really helped us. We've broken into a few more brands that we traditionally haven't. And I think we are on a good sort of trajectory now to work closer with brands, and I think that's how we are going to move forward from now.
Cool. Well, thank you. Ragheed, here with us from Geekay Esports, also one of the most prominent by results and by followership teams in the region. Ragheed, how's it been going with you in terms of brand sponsorships, in terms of the competitive results over the past year? Geekay has been killing it. So please tell us in terms of do you see that Geekay Esports as a team side of Geekay has been becoming a more sustainable part of the business? Is it still treated as a marketing way for Geekay Group as a retail store, or is it finally becoming a business entity on its own?
So for GK, when it started initially, it started as a marketing arm when we started like in 2021. But every year we kept on, tweaking it a little bit in order to be a sustainable organization in the region. And one of the core goals for us in 2026 is to be a fully, and like let's say standalone kind of an esports organization when it comes to part of GK. When you talk about like the sponsorships or what type of ecosystem are we using, or how are we using the ecosystem in a way where it's profitable for us? We do not depend only on sponsorships because like in the past, let's say 2 years, getting sponsorships in the esports, let's say industry itself is very difficult. That's why you see like teams such as like NASR is switching all the way to an academy and like an agency thing. If you talk about like Falcons, for example, it's like 50%. They are doing the content part of their ecosystem. For us, we are way more into like getting the teams that make sense when it comes to the financials, because there are a lot of titles in the esports industry. It is very tough for you to keep sustaining that specific team if there is no sponsorships, there is no partnerships from the publishers, and there is no way of an income apart from the prize pools. Prize pools are not enough, as you are aware. We started focusing on, okay, how can we get the partnerships in those specific titles that we are aiming at, such as, for example, HOK, Honor of Kings. We got a team from Malaysia, which is the best team in Malaysia. We studied, okay, what is the goal of that specific roster? The issue that we faced previously on most of the orgs I see in the region is there is no long-term plan of what do you want to do ahead in the next 3 or 4 years. And we kept on moving onward when, okay, how can we solve this problem? So we made our basically scouting and like projects, yearly projects, depends on multiple key factors. 1, is there a partnership in this title? 2, what is the budget? What is the cost of that specific team? And what is the income? And the scenarios. So we built three different scenarios for each team. Worst case scenario, best case scenario, and the average scenario. Because you cannot depend only on prize pools. You cannot depend only on partnerships. You cannot depend only on sponsorships. It's a full circle or a full, let's say, ecosystem. Sponsorships, game publisher partnerships, prize pools, and of course, things related to like Esports World Cup, big events, the ones that happened, for example, last year, the Games of the Future in Abu Dhabi. These events will play a huge role for our core rosters.
And since you've mentioned the Esports World Cup, from all the different initiatives that were recently launched in Saudi Arabia when it comes to esports, whether it is Saudi Esports League, whether it is EWC Club Partnership Program, whether any side activities coming from it, from your perspective as Geekay Esports, what has affected your business the most, and in what way? Can you give some clarity there?
So when I joined GK in 2022, back then GK was not part of the Saudi League. So meanwhile, I used to be a player. So I used to play in Saudi League. I used to play in the national league of. They have a league called E-League, aside from Esports World Cup. It's for the national football clubs, which is like Al Hilal, Nasr, and so on. So when they announced, okay, the support that is happening in Saudi E-League, I mentioned that we have to be part of this because that's how it's going to be a sustainable way or factor for us to move forward, to go international. Back then, we used to be a local organization. We were not like an international organization. But in order for you to go international, you need to make sure that you have the correct talent and, of course, the correct financials. So when you talk about, okay, the partnerships of Esports World Cup or Saudi League itself, for us, we see that this is a huge push for the esports industry, because without the government support, it's kind of impossible for you to go all the way, like in 5 or 4 years, going from a local organization all the way to an international organization, having top of the teams, such as, like, for example, Rocket League. We are the second best roster in 2025 in the Esports World Cup. How would you do that? The cost is very, very heavy, right? The sponsors will not help enough, even if they pay you whatever they pay you, because you have the boot camps, you have the cost of the salaries, you have the cost of the support staff. So the partnerships from the government, or this ecosystem from the government, helped a lot in the region, and that's why you see even in for example, I think a few weeks ago, they started pushing the same thing in France, where there will be some support for the French organizations. Yesterday or before yesterday, Saudi announced that there would be the esports, basically they will be teaching esports in the schools and the universities. So the entire ecosystem is changing. It's changing in a fast way. You just need to make sure that how can you take an advantage out of it. For example, what NASR did is very massive, the academy thing. For us, it's a different approach. We are not aiming at the academies for now because, as I told you, our aim is the international stages. But of course, in the future, of course, we will be looking at the academies, because that's where the governments will be putting their money. That's how they want to support their talents. They are not going to support only if you are going to play a tier 2 or a tier 3 tournament. No one cares about a tier 2 or tier 3 tournament, right?
Yeah.
So how can you take your local talent into the international stages? That's how I think, what we are aiming at, for example, as GK or even NASR or any other organization in the region.
So basically, well, it's glad to hear that today an esports team organization isn't just only about brand sponsorships or prize pool money. Today, you definitely have incentive programs from game publishers. I think Tencent is doing a great job from that perspective, yes, and also government entities. And the Saudi Esports League kind of gave that chance to give a more sustainable platform to local teams. I think, Darshan, you had something to add.
I was like, we'll work together on the academy bit,
yeah,
and move this together, right? Because he's right, the amount of effort that it takes in terms of capital and for everyone to come together, I think it's quite significant. Also, for all the efforts that he mentioned about the government, so Abu Dhabi Gaming, the Dubai government, with their plan, I think everyone sort of needs to come together, needs to pivot and do well commercially as well, because it's a huge challenge today for esports brands to tap into the commercial and to tap into the dollars, as we say.
Yeah, right. Mohammed, here with us from the Esports and Gaming Association. Thank you for coming. So when it comes to commercial deals in general in the region, what have been the trends from your experience, and also since you're working very closely with Twitch, and also Ragheed mentioned content in his previous segment, that content plays an important role in the commercialization part as well. What trends on Twitch in terms of content are coming out from the region? Can you add some points on that? Can we get Mohammed's microphone volume up?
There we go. I think when it comes to a lot of the challenges that you face with commercialization, especially with now what we're looking with esports, we have to take a step back and look at the gaming sector as an entire industry, right? It's a $300 billion sector. Content creator market in gaming represents about $38 billion, $40 billion of that industry. When we look at esports still is in about $4 billion of where it is at. So it's not to say that $4 billion is not a lot, but it's still showing that it's still a growing part of the gaming sector. So the challenges when it comes to commercialization, it comes with how to integrate them, right? Because what we look at now, if you compare to traditional sports, what are teams getting deals on usually? You'll have, let's say, the jersey sponsorship, right? The rights for jerseys. You'll have things that are peripheral partners. The teams who are playing or competing are utilizing a certain peripheral of keyboard, mouse, headset, things that can sort of give awareness and visibility to those partners who are enhancing. It's similarly to how a football player would maybe wear a specific shoe from Nike or Adidas, in the same scope that is for the player in peripherals. A lot of the other challenges usually also come with how to integrate those beyond just the esports. You know, players are on stage, the merch is available, the brand awareness is available when they play, but how do they integrate it off the stream, off the actual tournament side? And that's where I believe the content side comes in. Just as important as it is to develop the boot camps, the academies, yes, which to me is the next step forward, because academies and boot camps are similar to how traditional sports work. You know, take for example going to a Madrid sports academy as a young kid, right? The same idea is being utilized in esports, and that also will come with its own sponsors, venue, government initiative support. Certain brands who want to be a part of the academy, whether it's in workshops, whether it's in media training, whether it's in specific seminars on different talent pool work in the games. So when it comes to the deals, we have to also put the content side out of it, because the player is not just a player, they are a personality. Why do people resonate with Messi? Why do people resonate with Ronaldo? They are a personality as well. Outside of the football game that they play. So the esports player has to be developed as well in that same sense. How do they present themselves in a public format, right? Public speaking, media training, because when they're not competing, they're also streaming on Twitch, streaming on YouTube, wherever. And the people who watch them will resonate if they are able to see that personality come out in whatever the interest that they share. So I think what esports teams also, I think most don't do it well. I think Geekay now in the region is a team that's doing it well. But we see this mostly in North American teams, where they actually develop the talent that beyond esports, they are a personality. People watch them not because they are great at that game. People watch them because they are who they are. And that's just as important, because that's where commercial deals can come in. When you set up a deal with Red Bull tomorrow, when you set up a deal with Razer, or even cross-collaboration with other, for example, I'll give you a good example, 100 Thieves. Recently just did a merchandise drop. 100 Thieves is a gaming organization first, media org first, esports second. They have esports teams, but they are known as a lifestyle org before you can consider the other stuff. And recently they just did an activation with Pokemon, a merchandise drop, a gaming organization doing a merch drop with a known multi-billion-dollar company like Pokemon. And they do this beyond that. So that's where you have to integrate the lifestyle aspect into esports, because it's already being done on traditional sports. And I think the second would be the initiatives that come through. I think on the previous panel, mentioning Esports World Cup, I think is just as important. Now there's, as the colleague before mentioned, there's ring fence in the publishers, because each publisher wants to only promote their game. And unlike traditional sports, we don't have like the NBA, we don't have like the FIFAs. And I think that will come through at some point. And where can the biggest commercial aspect come through is the streaming rights. The streaming rights is still something that's not being looked on, because right now, today, I have a tournament that I can watch as a viewer on Blast Premier, the number, you know, on a tier 1 tournament for Counter-Strike. 100,000 viewers are watching that live on Twitch for free. If you are watching the same game on football, like the Premier League in England, or the NBA, you're watching that on a TV channel that's paid for on a package deal. The streaming rights, the cable rights, those are multi-billion-dollar deals that those channels pay. Sky Sports pays the Premier League for the rights to stream those games on their TV channels for the Premier League. That money is also allocated to the teams. Something similar that's being done in Esports World Cup, and I think more of that needs to happen. That also adds more to companies, sponsorships, brands, to be a part of that streaming rights package. So until we figure out the formula of how to monetize the streaming rights for the viewership, we will still be steps a few behind with the traditional sports. So that is a key element that I think once it's crossed over, everything else connects.
And since you've been working quite a while with content creators and around content in general, I know that like among YouTube influencers and news channels and content creators, not necessarily coming from gaming or esports, many of them have kind of paid segments of their content on the YouTube. Do you know if any of gaming content creators have tried similar approaches, and if yes, what have been the results?
Plenty. You know, on Twitch, I'll give an example. And he's not known exactly for gaming content, but for example, Kai Cenat. Kai Cenat is arguably, you can say, the biggest Twitch streamer there is right now, right? And he does segments like that on stream where, and I think this is more like a master class what we can talk about, which we might not have time to cover, but an example of how you can segment your stream as a content creator, as a streamer. So for example, esports players, to keep it to esports, a lot of them will segment their stream. The first 30 minutes is the introductory. They're getting a few warm-ups in. They're not really taking the training seriously. Then they'll have a segment on the stream which is purely they are focused and dialed in on the game that they're playing and just trying to get some reps and trainings in. Then the sponsor segment, for example, and I'll use now, this is where I want to switch to Kai Cenat. For example, he did an activation, and this is maybe like a year ago, with Red Dead Redemption. It's a very famous game published by Rockstar Games, and it's a cowboy-themed sort of game, right? His sponsor segment went beyond just him playing the game. He had an entire room made like as if it was in the 1800s out of a cowboy salon, if you want to call it that, and they had people cosplaying as cowboys and things like that. That is an example of taking a sponsorship and going more than above and beyond of what's the required amount, which is the least you could do is play it for 2 hours, but to actually have it done to that scope where you are now kind of immersing yourself in the world. And there was even some sort of, you could say, brand placement, product placements around the stream that he did very smartly with the brand partner and the game partner for sponsors. So that's, for example, things that you could do above and beyond when it comes to sponsored games, sponsored segments, is taking it and creating a sort of world in the stream. So like that entire segment, he probably played for like the whole day, but in that is 24 hours, that's, you could say 1,000, 2,000 clips that is going to be clipped out of that, thrown out, the impressions in the millions. So those are ways that you can segment. And esports players do this without knowing it, or maybe some of them know it, where they segment a sponsor stream, they segment the stream where the segment of that stream will be maybe an unboxing or something, and then that 30 minutes in itself will be cut into multiple content that the brands will utilize and run within their campaign. And then the segment where they're doing their training portion, which is they're locked in, they're training, they're getting their reps in, and you have the viewership watching and attending those segments. So those are ways that segments can happen that can go beyond just the stream. It goes beyond and creating content out of the stream.
So commercializing content among esports and gaming is kind of like the one of the next missions that all of us have to explore now. And unfortunately, our time is up. So I don't think that we have the time for the questions. But thank you everyone. Thanks for having us and hosting us here.
Thank you.